Hello!
Oh, hello!
Hi there! Welcome
Welcome!
to the land of Schuland.
Yes.
Yes, we have castles and geese that fly.
Look at them fly.
Yeah, forever.
Quack,
This one hasn't even moved its wings.
I
know.
That's what you call flying.
quack.
Yes.
All right.
Quack.
Today we have two amazing cultures, actually three if you want to get into it, that we are going to be talking about today. Thanks to Brie, we are going to be talking about a tribe from the Great Lakes near Michigan in the Ottawa area in Canada. And thanks to Luke, we are going to be talking about the early settlers and their encounters with the natives. So, let's get right into it. Brie asked us to talk about the Potawatomi tribe, and I'm probably saying that wrong, but I'm going to give it my best try on the Potawatomi tribe. And they had a certain language that they spoke, that also other people around it spoke as well, that had different dialects between the different cultures, and it's very important. It's the Algonquin language, and we are going to be talking about them. They lived near the Great Lakes near Michigan, Ottawa, and Lake Superior, and those Great Lakes. And their name, the Potawatomi tribe, it translates over to the people of the place of fire.
Ooh.
Yeah. Even though that they lived near the lakes, it translates to the people of the place of fire. And it's interesting enough, they were part of an alliance with other nearby tribes, and this alliance was called the Council of Three Fires. And they went to war with their neighbors and what have you, but as far as with their settlers and during the American Revolution, sometimes they were on one side, the British side, and one time they were on the American sides, depending on what they thought was best for them. And so that's a little bit of the history of them, and there's lots of that. But I wanted to get into a myth that they had about archery.
Ooh, an archery.
About archery, and it's a legend about a character named Nanabozho, and I'm probably saying that wrong because when I was looking him up, I found lots of information about him, but I found also just as many different ways of spelling it, and that's because the language that they spoke, that Algonquin language, did not have a written down language. So when the English were there, they just wrote down how they thought it sounded. And so, you hear something in a different language and you write it down a way, and then it might be different. Someone else is going to hear it a different way. So he has many different ways to spell his name. But in general, this character, Nanabozho, was basically the most upstanding, upright citizen of the tribe. And he always followed all of the rules and did everything that you're supposed to do. And he kept all of their traditions, and he's super important because of that.
He already sounds like a really good archer.
Yeah, exactly. So that means he's always pulling his bow to his anchor point, because he's going to make sure he's always following the archery rules.
Yeah.
So, his story begins with him looking for his cousin, because he was missing his cousin. So he went to where he thought his cousin might be, and when he was there, he did not find his cousin. Oh no, his cousin was not there. But he found something else instead. He found the tracks of the great serpent.
A great serpent?
A great serpent! And he found those tracks, and he knew right away that the great serpent had seized his cousin.
Oh no.
So he grabbed his bow and his arrow, and he went to the home of the great serpent. And there he found him at the bottom of a lake.
Ooh, a
Yes.
serpent lake.
With other different spirits and demons with him. Yes.
That doesn't sound very
And
nice.
he did not attack. He was smart. And he waited until the serpent fell asleep. The serpent had many different scales with many different colors, armored all over the place. And between his eyes, he had like a blood scale spot. And so the hero of our story took his bow after the great serpent had fallen asleep, knocked his arrow, loaded it, pulled, and shot the serpent. So strong and fast and fierce was the arrow that it howled through the air, whoosh, that it shook the very mountains around.
Whoa.
And scared the deer and scared the elk. And when it struck the serpent knew that he was going to die, and his demise was soon. But his anger was so vast that he caused a great flood to happen by splashing all the water of the lake up and flooding the entire area.
Oh no, that's not
Yes,
good.
That's not good at all. But our great hero was able to escape the flood. Unfortunately, he was not able to find his cousin alive. But I liked this story because when I found it, it sounded very much like the story we talked about last week.
Yes.
Bows and arrows, a serpent again, and destroying it, and then the serpent having one last breath to try to defeat the hero.
And both serpents had something important in between their eyes as well.
Exactly. Now, in this story, the serpent caused a flood, which would make sense because these are the people of the Great Lakes. There's water all over the place. Maybe this is a story that explains why there's water everywhere.
Or maybe this is the reason why there was a flood once.
Exactly.
That's the reason for that flood.
Exactly. Or whenever there is a flood, maybe it's because the serpent's getting angry. Lots of different things it could have to do. So the story is very same and very similar, but it has its own important differences. And the other interesting thing is that it also has a bow and arrow, which I also find very interesting because today we talked about a tribe from America, and last week we talked about a tribe from America. But in the weeks beforehand, we talked about other heroes and characters who also used a bow. And it just seems to me how important the bow has been in human history. That in every single culture we talk about, we find a myth that involves them using a bow and arrow to defeat their enemy.
Well, remember, guys, bows and arrows were on every single continent except for Australia.
Exactly.
And bows and arrows were invented a really, really long time ago.
Exactly. So it would make sense that the bow and arrow is very important to human tradition, human culture, and just humans in general. It's the way you hunt, it's the way you defend yourself. It's a great tool to be used.
It's the great thing that we can use our brains in order to invent tools to make our lives easier.
Exactly, yes. Well then, I left out one interesting fact that I really liked. Our hero, Nanabozho, he was named after the west wind. Ooh, yes, the west wind or the sun. I couldn't find if it was either or maybe just both.
It could be both.
It could be both. It could be one or the other, depending on which part of the language, the Algonquin language we're talking about, because it was a language that had a very large area, which makes me think that that's probably this story that we talked about today and the story we talked about last week probably have the same origins. And then that story got separated, or maybe there was just two different heroes.
And maybe the giant serpent was so important that it was the reason why there were the two heroes.
Exactly. All right then, which means today we are going to go outside to the field of Schulens and we are going to be hunting our own
Great serpent.
With colorful scales. And we are going to be doing it with a very special bow right here. Now, the normal bows that we shoot are about 14 to 12 pounds. This wooden one right here, it's a composite. made in different materials. It's wood, but it also has some other materials in here as well, I think.
Like some plastic laminate to reinforce the limbs.
Exactly. Is 33 pounds.
Now,
33 pounds.
it might not sound like a lot, but it is.
It's a lot. It is very powerful. And because we're shooting outside, we're going to be using our foam arrows, and we're probably not even going to be drawing it all the way back to our anchor point because we don't want to miss and damage anything because it's very, very powerful. But we wanted to go ahead and let you guys see it in action and show you what a wooden bow can do. There you go. You can notice on it that the limbs are connected to the riser and that they do not come off. There's no screws or bolts for them to come off. And this bow would be very similar to something that some of the different American tribes would be using. Just basically a single stick of wood strung up and made in this kind of a way. So, we're gonna go ahead and head out to the fields of Shulin. Do 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 do. Do 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 do. Do 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 do.
Do do do. Do do do. Do 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 do. Do do. Ba da da bum. Da 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 da. Cha.
All right, we're outside. I've got my arrows. Each one of us is going to shoot 3 arrows, and we are going to try to defeat our own serpent. Over here, you can see that Captain Crow is with our serpent with the scales of many colors.
Hiss hiss.
Also, we also have the blood scale up here at the front on its head.
Yes, exactly. So, we're going to go ahead and see who can defeat the most scales of it. And like I said, we're probably not going to be drawing all the way to our anchor point because it's very, very strong, very, very powerful. So, let's go ahead and do this. That one doesn't have a knock. That one doesn't have a knock. There we go.
Ooh, close.
I'm definitely not the great hero.
It's very hard when you don't use your anchor point.
Yes, very hard not using an anchor point, but it's so powerful. I'm right underneath it every time. All right. That made resetting the game very easy. So let's go ahead and see if I can do any better at getting that great serpent.
It shoots lower than you think.
It shoots low.
It shoots lower than you think. Oh, missed.
All right, last arrow.
I got 3 of the scales.
There we go. Now, Lady Fern is not joining us today. So I am going to go ahead and shoot for her. Let's see if we could get some more of that serpent and channel my inner Lady Fern skills.
Oh, shouldn't you be shooting left-handed then?
It's not a left-handed bow, so no.
Ooh, close.
As you can see, Lady Fern is slightly better though. No! It's difficult to do it without your anchor point. Clearly, I am not the hero I need to be today. Anyways, let's go back inside and hear about what Luke had asked us to talk about. Jump cut!
Doop 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 doop. Da da ba da da da. Do do ba da 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 da. Do 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 do. Do 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 do.
Welcome back!
Ah, yes, we're back.
So, Luke had the great idea of asking us, how did the Pilgrims and Indians hunt when they first got here to the Americas? And so, what we're going to talk about is we're actually going to talk about the Native American tribe called the Wampanoag tribe, which are the tribe that is responsible for Thanksgiving. They're the ones who helped out those pilgrims originally when those pilgrims had a really hard time growing any food or hunting in the Americas. Because in America, we have a much different forest than they do over in England. There weren't a lot of people chopping down the trees here in America, so the brush is much thicker, so it's much harder to shoot an animal with the bow because you have to get a lot closer. So it means you need to be a much more skilled hunter in order to get closer to that animal.
Ah, you have to be a lot quieter.
Yeah, so this is something that the Pilgrims did not have a lot of experience with, but the Wampanoag tribe did. And the Wampanoag tribe also did a lot of other things to help out those Pilgrims. But to start off with, we're going to learn where they're from. So if you know where Massachusetts is and Rhode Island, they're in that area. It's a little small area, but it's on the East Coast. It's north of Washington. Yeah, I was gonna go with New York City, but yeah, it's over there.
North of Florida.
Yes, it's much north of Florida. About as far north as you can go from Florida. Now, one of the really cool things about the Wampanoag is that their name translates to the people of dawn.
Ooh, the people of the dawn.
Yeah.
Like the soap?
No, like the sun.
Oh.
Because you're all the way on the East Coast, so where does the sun rise? In the East.
In the East.
Yes. So it's the first people to see the sunrise. So that's why they're the people of the dawn. Now, the Wampanoags were a little bit strange as far as the Native American group goes. They were semi-sedentary in their movements, which meant that they lived in one place longer than they were hunter-gatherers. Normally, when we have a group like that, they're called semi-nomadic because they spend more time going around than they do staying in one place. So that means the Wampanoag people were farmers, and while they were farming, for the majority of the year, they stayed in the same place. When you couldn't farm, that's when they went around and traveled around.
Oh, so they did mostly farming, then they would travel around. Got it.
Yeah. Now, the Wampanoags also were a society that's completely backwards from our Pilgrims in that they were a matriarchal society.
What's that mean?
That means that it was the moms who were in charge.
Ah, good old mom.
Yeah, so that means that your last name would come from your mom.
Ah.
That if you had any property or land and your mom died, it would be passed to her daughter first.
Oh, the eldest daughter.
Yes.
Oh, that's very different than the Pilgrims from England at the time.
Right, because they were in a patriarchal society where it all passed down through the father's side.
Oh, so you get your dad's last name.
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
Now, what the men's role was, though, is they were the hunters and the fishers.
Oh, I love fishing.
They pretty much didn't do anything else.
That's it.
That's
Just
it.
hunt and fish.
Yeah, the women farmed, they made the clothes, they cooked the food, they raised the kids.
Awesome.
Yeah. Now, some of the famous Wampanoag people you might have actually heard of already. You might have heard of Squanto, or Samoset, or even Chief Massasoit. If I pronounced that last one correct. I don't think I did.
Probably not.
Probably not, but
No.
you definitely have probably heard of Squanto.
I have.
Now, before the Pilgrims came, the Wampanoag people mainly hunted with bows and arrows. After the Pilgrims came, it became a mix of hunting with bows and arrows and with muskets. And what a musket is it's a very early rifle. And it's called a musket because it doesn't have rifling.
Which we'll get into later.
Yeah. Now, the Pilgrims brought over a new technology with them called black powder and these black powder muskets. Also, then the Pilgrims, because they were so thankful of the Wampanoag and all of the things that they taught them, decided to trade those muskets to the Wampanoag people. So the Wampanoag people eventually used muskets as well as bows and arrows to hunt with. So now we're going to go ahead and show you what a replica of one of these rifles or one of these muskets look like. So this is much different than a modern gun. As in, the way that it works is you pull this back and it has a piece of flint here. So what this is this makes a strike against right here. And this is a pan. So if you've ever heard of the term flash in the pan, that's where that comes from. Now, as you can see, there are two triggers on this. And the first trigger makes it so that way it sets the flint into a position where it can strike, and then the second one is the one that actually makes it go forward. It's really, really complicated for how simple it is. Now, the next thing that makes it super complicated is you're using black powder in order to shoot the rifle. So how you load it is not like a modern gun. You have to load it down the barrel. And in order to do that, you need something called a ramrod. And what that is it is a stick that you would then put down the barrel of the rifle. So, this one right here, we did not load it. We'll go ahead and take the ramrod out, and it is a super complicated process. Now, what makes it so good though is how much energy and force you get from the musket here.
Yes, a bow, much like this one, this is 33 pounds, but a general hunting bow that the American tribes might use would be anywhere between 50 pounds all the way up to 80 pounds, which means it's delivering at 80 pounds about 100 pounds of kinetic force to whatever your target is, which is plenty. However,
well, how many foot-pounds does it take to hunt a grizzly bear?
I've looked it up and it says about 50 pounds.
So the bows that they were using were more than enough to take down the great American bears that they were experiencing. Now, these muskets that the Pilgrims brought over have a kinetic energy at 100 yards of over 1,100 pounds of force.
That is a lot more.
It's about 11 times more.
That means you could be much farther away.
Yes. So your average shot you would take with a musket would be about 100 yards away. Do you think you could shoot an animal with a bow at 100 yards?
Probably not. You'd probably have to get much closer, which is much more difficult. You'd have to be very sneaky and sneak up on it.
Yes, and because we were hunting in North America, it's much more foresty, so you have to get a lot closer to those animals, which made bows so effective.
Exactly. How long would it take to load one of those?
Oh, well you see, most people would be able to load one in a minute.
Only one?
Yeah, the best loaders of the day could do 3 a minute. Look at the speed on that.
That's a lot faster than 1 a minute. However, I think I could load this much quicker. So if I missed my target with my bow, which I did plenty today, I could easily reload it and try again. And this doesn't make very much noise.
No, it
which
doesn't.
means I would certainly not scare off whatever I was hunting if I missed.
However, this is really loud.
Very loud.
You scared away everything.
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 Like everything. Like even the ants.
Yeah, they even got scared.
Yeah, they went back in their ant holes.
Also, this one is so loud it hurts your own ears when it goes off.
Oh yes, I'm sure it does.
Yeah.
Yes. Well, that's fantastic.
So now that we've shown you kind of where the progression of technology has gone, we see that it even happened in the year 1600 is where we see that bows are starting to get phased out of hunting because you can get so much more distance with a musket.
which is better because I do not want to get close to a grizzly bear.
No, not at all.
No, that sounds like a bad idea.
Mm-hmm.
Have you seen one of them things?
They're really big and they're scary.
They're big and scary and have teeth.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Have you guys heard of the Lewis and Clark missions that went across America and discovered all the way to the West Coast?
No, do tell me.
Oh, well, they're unique because they used the famous Native American Sacagawea in order to come across the Americas. She was their guide as they made it all the way across.
Ah.
So American history is more like how the Pilgrims came over and then interacted with the natives and how they then shaped the Americas.
Excellent. Awesome. All right. That's a lot of information about a bow and what it eventually kind of turned into. Now, one of the things I wanted to talk about now that we have one of these muskets out here. Go ahead, hold it up for me one more time. Whenever we're shooting bows and arrows, we always say ready, draw, aim, and we say fire, right? Well, the reason why we say fire is because of what happens right here. When the hammer comes down, there's fire that ignites that black powder. And it makes fire at the end and a little bit down over here, which is why you say fire, because you're actually causing fire to happen. But on a bow, there is no fire at all. You're just letting go of the string, which means whenever you're out there with the bow and arrow, you should never really, traditionally or historically say, ready, aim, fire. You should say, ready, aim, and the word loose, which would be to let go of that string. So, other than that, I think that will conclude our day today. So, thank you very, very much. We had a wonderful time doing all of these great videos with you, and we hope to see you again.
Hopefully we see you soon.
Alrighty then.
Bye, guys.
Bye!